Welcome to Wonderful Wednesday. I have Karman Briggs here, UC member. And Karman, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about the work that you do at Western Dairyland.
Oh, for sure. Okay, so Western Dairyland, I'm not sure. I think a lot of people are familiar with Western Dairyland through the work that the Social Responsibility Committee does, particularly with the homeless program at Western Dairyland. Um, and I think that's often how people are familiar with the agency overall. They're kind of tied into a specific program or project run by the Community Action Agency. But community action in general really has kind of an interesting history that goes back to the 60s with Lyndon Baines Johnson's War on Poverty.
Oh, wow.
And that created the initial funding that launched all these community action agencies throughout the nation that all are, have the same mission to alleviate poverty related conditions. And by first identifying the needs at a local level and then building programs, finding funding and building programs to meet those needs. And that's why you'll see, like, over the decades that community action agencies, like in Wisconsin, have a very different array of programs than a community action agency in Florida or Arizona. For example, like at Western Dairyland, our biggest programs are energy assistance and weatherization because it gets cold,
Yes.
and Head Start. Those are our two biggest programs. But like I mentioned, we also have homeless shelters, food pantries. We have a Wheels for Work program. Fresh Start is a program that works with at-risk youth and teaches them construction skills. We have a child care resource and referral program. Kind of a wide array of programs. The one that I specifically work with is the Jobs and Business Development program. So which is also funded as a women's business center. And my project within Western Dairyland is often a little bit different because we're not usually giving direct aid like food, clothing, shelter,
Mhm.
but we're providing more education and access to resources so that people can have an opportunity to create some economic self-sufficiency through entrepreneurial efforts, or just by increasing their household income through side gigs. Even right now, we're seeing a lot of folks that are struggling with their household finances, and even existing businesses, small businesses that have really been struggling. So we've been working really hard to meet with those folks to help them identify new opportunities and access to markets and collaborations that could help them live more sustainable.
Wow. That's a lot. What do
Yeah.
you find is the most challenging part of doing this during COVID?
Oh, absolutely. This last year is been, I think, definitely one of the most challenging, and but also in a weird way, one of the most inspiring years of my employment within this program, because I've really, we've definitely have seen people come in with, people who have never had need before to reach out to government programming, have come into, out of some desperation, or people that didn't even realize that they could possibly be, because they've never had to before. They didn't realize there might be programs that could help them out. And the response to that from, members in the community, people, we have an advisory board, our board of directors, our volunteer base, it's just,
So,
yeah, it's been really, for example, just within the Jobs and Business Development program, we've run, fairly lean in the, last couple of years, where we just have, probably about 3 staff that are dedicated to that specific program. And then, but in this last year, we've brought on about 10 additional people on an independent contract part-time, to help out in a variety of different ways to meet directly with clients and help them navigate through the, whether it's PPP loans or EIDL grants or things like that.
what are you finding inspiration from, as far as, are you seeing just so much ingenuity and
Yeah, really, like, I think that, people that have come to me, like, they've recognized a need. And this is like, I feel like it's just part and parcel with what the nature of community action is, where, again, like, because the needs in our community, nobody knows those needs better than the people in our own community. And so when people from our community recognize a need and say like, hey, I see that this is, a prevalent thing within, like the restaurant industry, the food industry in general has been hit really, really hard. I've got some ideas on maybe ways we can, help serve them better or help them create some better opportunities, and, coming in with answers and solutions for those as well. I think, we're going to be launching a peer mentorship program shortly, where we'll be doing sort of a matchmaking system where we're matching up people that are kind of at the same stage of business development but in non-competing industries to kind of help each other through this next year. And that project is definitely come out of needs identified and people stepping forth to kind of take the reins on a project like that.
Do you think that even though it's been a really tough year, are there things that you've learned or that some of your clients have learned that you think will make them more resilient, or that things will be different going forward? Or
and we talk about that quite a bit because I think I don't know, like I hear some folks talk about like, once we get through the pandemic and get back to normal, but I think there's so many things that have forever marked us and this generation, and I think there's some things that will forever be different the way we work and conduct business. And I think like I've definitely this emphasis on trying to support each other locally. I think making an impact where you can locally, I think is going to have a huge everlasting impact. And, and I feel like it kind of, just for me, I grew up, I had a single mom. Our family business was a bookstore. And I grew up in a small town in a downtown, our downtown area of a small community. And so I've always had this concept of, that commerce creates community because, I would get my hair cut by the hairdresser across the street. She would come buy books. We would get, we would shop at the drugstore around the corner. We had, our bank was, and all these things help support multiple families moving forward, and that interconnectedness on a very like tangible level, I guess. I don't know, it's hard to escape, when a crisis comes through, and you can see some very key ways that you can make an impact in your immediate community.
So speaking of your younger life, what do you think drove you into wanting to do kind of this helping profession or working in nonprofit world?
Yeah, it's oddly like I feel like what I do is nothing I ever thought I would be doing, but it fits me incredibly well. Because I actually, I went to school again, like growing up in a bookstore, I wanted to be a writer. That was what I wanted to do. I had no idea, nothing in me wanted to pursue business, or I wasn't a member of FBLA or or anything like that. And when I went to college, I tried journalism and eventually graduated with a creative writing degree. Mm-hmm. And without any real specific plans after that, but then, life changes happen, and, my mom passed away shortly within that first year after I graduated. And, and you start taking things very seriously about, gosh, like, a couple of missteps, and I could be in a very difficult situation without having a safety net. Mm-hmm. And you just start recognizing the need for that community safety net, not just for you, but for everybody else. Mm-hmm. And I think, so, as a result of that, I really kind of, I had a good job right out of college that I kind of fell into that working for a locally owned business that, I learned a lot, and they actually paid for me to go back to school and get some possibly more tangible skills within web development design. And that propelled me into my first position at Western Dairyland, where I was managing this e-commerce network for small businesses throughout our service area and helping them, again, create income for themselves. And, and from there, I just started recognizing, like, so many of the people that I work with, I mentioned how we're also funded, our jobs and business development program is funded as a women's business center. And there are only about 100 women's business centers in the country. And I always love to give a little background on that too, if I can. Like, the women's business centers actually started back in the 80s with the Office of Women's Business Ownership. And prior to some federal changes in the 80s, many women were still required to get a male cosigner just to get a business loan. Wow. And yeah, so a lot of things changed. And so it brings us up to today where, in our region, close to 40% of the small businesses are owned by women at this time. But so women are closing that gap. However, the businesses owned by women are still much smaller in scope and scalability than the businesses owned by men. They only employ about 9% of the workforce. They only contribute about 4% to revenues on a national level. And so that size and scalability just, kind of lends back towards the just sort of that gender gap that exists yet and stuff. So most of the women that we end up working with are women that are just like my mom, where she had no more than a high school degree. She took over the family business after my dad had passed away, and had no business experience, or really, she'd been a homemaker prior to that. And so we were in that, a third of single moms live in poverty, and we were in that category for sure, and struggling. So, I definitely, like I said, the career path that I'm on right now is nothing that I even knew existed probably or had planned for, but it fits me so well because I'm able to kind of, I think I can empathize a lot with the clients and the situation they're in. And, none of the folks we're working with are trying to take over the world with their global companies or corporations. They're literally trying to find ways to survive. And, and women in particular, because they're more likely than men to be the caretaker of their children, they do have a harder time. And not only caretaker of the children, but possibly caretaker of their own parents. They do have a harder time finding traditional income that's going to be sustainable for their families. So, entrepreneurial efforts, entrepreneurship sounds like a big, scary word, but self-employment becomes the most viable option for them to try to escape poverty.
Yeah. Well, are there opportunities right now where people can, if they have extra volunteer time, connect with Western Dairyland?
Oh, for sure. There's definitely, throughout the year, depending on what your interest area is, like I mentioned, all the programs at Western Dairyland stem out of this desire to alleviate poverty-related conditions, but they do so in different manners. So if you have a specific population that you would really like to work with, or a specific type of work that you would really enjoy doing, there's probably some way to fit in. And there's different things that come up throughout the year, everything from, every year we have an annual women's business conference. I'm not sure how that's going to look this year. And we also, twice a year we do a annual homeless count, and identify people who are living without shelter in the service area. And that takes a wide number of volunteers. We have mentorship opportunities for people that would like to meet with, share their expertise and their life skills with other people. There's just so many, it's a really wide range of things that you could get involved with. So yeah. Obviously the one I know the most about is my own program, right, but if somebody's interested in finding out more, seeing how they might be able to help out, you can always contact me.
Okay, and I'll make sure to put up our the website for Western Dairyland too, if they can find out information there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of I think again with community action and some of the funding that's coming down federally to the, a lot of that funding is coming through agencies like Western Dairyland to get out quickly through the community to save people from evictions and issues with their mortgage and utilities and things like that. So
Well, what are you hopeful about right now? I mean, I mean, it's been a hard time. What's giving you hope right now?
Yeah, well, I think, one of the things that we talk a lot about is, you know, like through turning obstacles into opportunities. And it sounds like super cliche, but I have seen, like you mentioned, the ingenuity of folks, kind of shine through where, maybe the way they were operating or the way they were doing life or doing business or, they're not going to be able to do it that way again. And they've found really interesting, creative ways to do things differently. And I feel like that, as long as we still have our creativity in our community, like we're going to be able to find ways to continue and thrive even. So I think that's whenever I see somebody coming forth with a very, something new like that, I love that. That inspires me quite a bit.
Yay. Well, is there anything that you'd want to share, just in general about,
Yeah. Well, probably the one thing, and this isn't specific to my program with the Women's Business Center, but I would like to make sure everybody's aware of the RAP program, the CAP program through Western Dairyland, and we're kind of still. The last I had heard, we're still waiting for some guidelines as to how funds can be dispersed, but there are going to be a lot of funds coming through Western Dairyland for folks that have been financially impacted by the pandemic that can assist them with not just rent, but mortgage payments and utilities and some other, and it's a pretty pervasive program. And we're just waiting for some guidelines. So I think, being ambassadors and, again, just being part of the community and sharing information when you hear information that might help other people and passing that along is always helpful.
well, thank you for doing what you do, and it makes me wonder if your typewriter hobby is tied into your creative writing background, or is that just
Oh, for
like
sure. That could
pure
be a
luck?
whole other conversation.
Okay, we'll do another typewriter one, but
Okay, awesome.
well, thanks for talking to us, and we'll see you soon.
Okay, thanks, Julie.